Wembley Stadium, Sunday afternoon. Mikel Arteta's Arsenal walk out in front of tens of thousands of their own supporters for a cup final. The first time this has happened in nearly 6 years. And the man standing between the post for the Gunners is not their number one. It is not David Raya. It is Kepa Arrizabalaga, a goalkeeper who has been to this exact stage before. Twice, and lost both times. Now he stands here again, older, more experienced, wearing Arsenal red, and the entire football world is watching. That detail alone tells you something important. It tells you about planning. It tells you about squad depth. It tells you about the way Arteta has built this club from the ground up. You do not just stumble into a cup final with a backup goalkeeper who has played every single round of the competition. That is deliberate. That is structure. That is a manager who trusts every single member of his squad, and a squad that is capable of delivering at the highest level, regardless of who is in goal. The situation is extraordinary when you step back and look at it properly. Arsenal are not simply in a cup final. They are 9 points clear at the top of the Premier League. They have just beaten Bayer Leverkusen 2-0 to reach the quarterfinals of the UEFA Champions League. They have a quarterfinal FA Cup tie still to come against Southampton. Every single major trophy available to them in English and European football is still within reach. Every single one. That is the reality of where this club is right now. And the Carabao Cup final on Sunday is not just a cup final. It is the opening act of what could become one of the most historic seasons in Arsenal Football Club's modern history. Now, let us be very clear about what is at stake here. Not just for Arsenal, for everyone involved in this story. For Arsenal, it is the opportunity to end a trophy drought that has stretched for nearly 6 years. The last time they lifted silverware was the 2020 FA Cup at Wembley. A final played in complete and total silence. No supporters, no atmosphere. Just players shouting at each other across an empty stadium because of the circumstances of the time. Arteta won it. He beat Chelsea that day. But there was no crowd to celebrate with. No roar. No shared moment between a manager and his supporters. Just a hollow victory in an echoing ground. This Sunday is the exact opposite. Over 31,939 Arsenal supporters will be inside Wembley Stadium. Cheering, singing, believing. That number matters. That context matters. Because after 6 years of coming close, after years of watching other clubs lift trophies, after title races that slipped away at the final hurdle, the Arsenal fan base deserves this moment more than most outside the club will ever understand. For Kepa Arrizabalaga, the personal stakes are just as significant. He has played in 2 League Cup finals in his career before this one, 19 and 2022. He did not win either of them. He arrives at Wembley on Sunday with unfinished business and with a point to prove. Not to the world perhaps, but to himself. And there is no better stage than a cup final to settle that kind of personal account. For Pep Guardiola and Manchester City, the stakes are different. They arrive at this final on the back of being knocked out of the Champions League by Real Madrid. A 5-1 aggregate defeat, humiliating by any standard. And Guardiola knows that if Arsenal win on Sunday, his rivals will have dealt them a psychological blow that will echo through the remainder of the season. City will have lost European football and their best chance of domestic silverware in the space of a few days. That is not a position any elite manager wants to be in. Before we go any further into the details, if you are watching this channel for the first time and you want serious independent analysis on stories like this, hit that subscribe button right now. Tom Arsenal Talks brings you the full picture, the real picture on everything happening at Arsenal and across the football world. Do not miss a single video. Subscribe now and stay ahead of the conversation. Let us now go through this properly, piece by piece, because there is a lot happening around this final and every detail matters. Start with Kepa, start with the goalkeeper, because the goalkeeper is where this story truly begins. Kepa Arrizabalaga is the backup goalkeeper at Arsenal. Everyone knows that. David Raya is the number one. He is the man Arteta trusts for the Premier League, for the Champions League, for the biggest moments in the top flight. That is the established order at the club. But Arteta made a clear and deliberate decision when the domestic cup competitions began. Kepa would play. Kepa would be the cup goalkeeper. And Kepa would carry that responsibility through every single round until the final. That kind of decision is not made lightly. It requires trust. It requires confidence that the backup goalkeeper is capable of performing at the highest level when it matters most. And that is exactly the confidence Arteta has clearly shown in Kepa. The man has played through every round of the Carabao Cup campaign. He has earned his place in this final. He has not been handed it. And when Kepa speaks about Sunday, he speaks with the clarity of someone who has been in these moments before. He knows what a Wembley final feels like. He knows the build-up, the atmosphere, the weight of it all. He has described the atmosphere at Wembley as so special, with everything around the game being special too, from the build-up to every surrounding detail. He knows that when you walk out onto that pitch, you know you are one game away from lifting a trophy. And he understands, more than most, how rare and difficult that opportunity is. He has also been direct about Manchester City. There is no arrogance in his words. No dismissiveness. He has acknowledged clearly that City have great players in every single position and that they are without doubt one of the strongest teams in football. He has recognized their depth of quality and the range of options available to Guardiola. That kind of honest assessment from a player before a final tells you that Arsenal are not walking into this game believing it will be easy. They know the challenge, they respect it, and they are preparing for it accordingly. But here is what stands out most in what Kepa said. He spoke about the trophy cabinet. He used that phrase specifically. He said that hopefully this could be a way for Arsenal to open their trophy cabinet and to keep it open. That is not the language of a player who is satisfied with simply being in the final. That is the language of a squad that is hungry. That is the language of a group of players who understand that Sunday is not the end of the road. It could be the beginning of something far bigger. And that is where the quadruple conversation becomes impossible to ignore. 9 points clear in the Premier League, quarterfinals of the FA Cup against Southampton, quarterfinals of the UEFA Champions League, and now a Carabao Cup final on Sunday. Every trophy still in the running for every single one. Now let us talk about the historical context because it is directly relevant to understanding what Sunday means. The last time Arsenal were at Wembley for a cup final was the 2020 FA Cup final against Chelsea. Arteta's first season in charge, he had taken over the previous December, mid-season, walking into a club that had lost its direction under the previous manager. Mistakes were frequent, efficiency was non-existent, and yet Arteta found a way to win. He reorganised the side, changed the system, and somehow guided Arsenal to FA Cup glory in what was his first campaign in charge. But here is the thing about that 2020 final that often gets forgotten in the wider conversation. There was nobody there, not a single supporter inside Wembley. The circumstances of that period meant the final was played in complete silence. Aubameyang scored twice, Arsenal beat Chelsea 2-0, Arteta lifted the trophy, and yet the entire occasion was missing the one ingredient that makes football what it is. The people. The contrast with Sunday could not be sharper. Over 31,939 Arsenal supporters will be inside that stadium. That is a number worth saying again, because it represents the scale of what this moment means to the fan base. These are supporters who were not there in 2020. These are supporters who have watched 4 or 5 years of near misses and heartbreak in the Premier League. These are supporters who have been patient, who have believed in the process, and who now arrive at Wembley with genuine, legitimate reason to believe that their team can win. And Arteta beat Guardiola at Wembley before. That is a fact worth noting. In the semi-final of that 2020 FA Cup, Arteta's Arsenal defeated Manchester City. Aubameyang scored twice in that game as well. So there is history here. Arteta has already shown he can outthink Guardiola at this stage of a competition. That knowledge does not guarantee anything on Sunday, but it matters. It is context. Let us now turn to Manchester City and look honestly at where they are. The situation for City heading into this final is one of real difficulty. They were knocked out of the Champions League by Real Madrid in the last 16. The aggregate score was 5-1. And in the second leg, they finished the game with 10 men. That is a damaging result by any measure. It strips City of their European football for the remainder of the season and places enormous pressure on what is left of their campaign. Guardiola himself has 3 survivors from the squad that was beaten by Arsenal in the 2020 FA Cup semi-final. Bernardo Silva, Rodri, and Phil Foden. 3 experienced players who carry the memory of that defeat. And on Sunday, they will face a completely different Arsenal side. A side with depth, quality, and momentum that the 2020 version of this club could not have matched. But City still have quality. Kepa himself acknowledged that. They still have great players in every position. This is not a City side that should be dismissed. Guardiola has built an organisation that competes for trophies consistently. This is their 10th EFL Cup showpiece. That statistic alone tells you about the infrastructure and the winning culture that exists at that club. However, they arrive at this final with specific and confirmed absences that will limit what Guardiola can do tactically. The first absence is Josko Guardiola. The Croatian defender suffered a tibial fracture earlier this year, a serious injury that required surgery. The situation is that his return date is currently unknown, and there is a genuine possibility that he could miss the rest of the season entirely. Losing a defender of Guardiola's quality for this final, and potentially beyond, is a significant blow to City. He is a modern, dynamic left-sided defender who contributes both in and out of possession. His absence is not something Guardiola can simply paper over. The second absence is Marc Guéhi, and this is perhaps the most important detail of all when it comes to understanding City's squad situation for Sunday. Guéhi is cup-tied. That is the confirmed reality. He represented Crystal Palace earlier in this very competition. Manchester City signed him after the EFL Cup semi-final first leg against Newcastle United in mid-January. That timing is crucial because the rules are clear. If you have already represented one club in a cup competition during that same season, you cannot represent a different club in the same competition. Guéhi is unavailable for Sunday's final. Full stop. That is not a rumour. That is not speculation. It is a confirmed and straightforward consequence of the transfer timeline. His earliest possible return for Manchester City will be the FA Cup quarter-final against Liverpool in April. So for Sunday, Guardiola must plan without him. 2 confirmed defensive absences for a final against a team in brilliant form. That is a difficult position to be in. Now let us look at the Arsenal side specifically and talk about the players who carry the history of this club into Sunday's final. Bukayo Saka, he is the only member of the Arsenal squad who was also part of the 2020 FA Cup winning squad. He did not play in the final that day. He was an unused substitute. He was barely a first-team regular at that point, a teenager finding his way in the game. Now he is one of the most important players in European football. He has grown with this club through every stage of Arteta's rebuild. And on Sunday, if he plays, he will be carrying the thread of continuity between what Arsenal were 6 years ago and what they have become today. That is a powerful narrative, not for sentiment, for what it tells us about the development of this club. Saka was not ready in 2020. He is ready now, and that transformation mirrors the transformation of the entire squad around him. Then there is Piero Hincapié. He has just played against his former club, Bayer Leverkusen, the club that Arsenal beat 2-0 in the Champions League round of 16 second leg. And Hincapié was direct about how that felt. There was emotion. There was a sense of sadness about facing former teammates. But he was equally clear about where his focus lies now. He is with Arsenal. He is focused on Sunday. And he wants to win the title. He also spoke about Eberechi Eze's goal in the Leverkusen game. He described it as amazing. A fantastic strike. He admitted he did not know at the time that it was Eze's first goal for the club. And that detail, the fact that it was a first goal coming in a Champions League knockout tie, scored with the kind of quality that made headlines across Europe, tells you something about the firepower available to Arteta right now. Speaking of Eze, there is a concern worth mentioning here. He came off in that Leverkusen game with what appeared to be an injury. The evidence suggests this is something being monitored carefully ahead of Sunday. Whether he is available for the final is a question that will need to be answered in the coming days. The fact that he was named specifically in connection with a potential injury concern is significant because he has been one of the most impactful players in the squad since his arrival. And then there is Martin Odegaard, the captain. There has been an injury concern around him as well in recent days. But the update on his situation has been described as ideal from Arsenal's perspective ahead of the final. That is an encouraging signal. Odegaard's availability would be a significant boost for Arteta's plans on Sunday. What this Arsenal squad now represents is genuinely different from any version of the club in the recent era. Arteta inherited a broken team in December of 2019. He found a way to win an FA Cup in a stadium with no supporters. And then over the years that followed, he systematically rebuilt every department of the club. A back four arrived. Gabriel and William Saliba became one of the best central defensive partnerships in European football. Jurrien Timber was brought in. Piero Hincapié joined from Leverkusen. Ricardo Calafiori added another layer of quality and versatility. The contrast with the 2020 squad is stark. That side featured a back five of Hector Bellerin, Rob Holding, David Luiz, Kieran Tierney, and Ainsley Maitland-Niles. Socrates Papastathopoulos and Sead Kolasinac came on as substitutes to see out the game. These were good footballers, but that was a squad in transition. A squad being managed through a difficult period. The current Arsenal squad is the product of a coherent and sustained vision. Every player has been brought in for a specific reason. Every piece of the puzzle fits. And that is what makes the quadruple conversation so compelling. This is not a squad that got lucky in a cup draw. This is not a squad that stumbled into a final through a weak bracket. Arsenal are 9 points clear in the Premier League with the kind of defensive and attacking quality that makes them genuine favourites, not just for Sunday, but for the season as a whole. City being knocked out of the Champions League by Real Madrid matters in this context too. Because Guardiola's men will have no European football to manage alongside their domestic commitments for the rest of the season. In normal circumstances, that might be seen as an advantage. More recovery time, less fixture congestion, but psychologically walking into a cup final, days after a 5-1 aggregate exit from Europe, is not a comfortable place to be. The mood around that dressing room will need to be lifted. The confidence will need to be rebuilt quickly. And Guardiola will need to find a way to channel the frustration of Tuesday's result into motivation for Sunday. Whereas Arsenal walk into this final on the back of a Champions League qualification, a 2-0 win over Bayer Leverkusen, a step further into European football at the highest level, a competition that was not even possible for Arsenal in 2020 when they were playing Europa League football. That is the scale of the progress this club has made. And the mood in that dressing room will reflect it. Kepa summed it up best when he talked about what winning this trophy could mean for the rest of the campaign. He spoke about his teammates as big players who have played in big games. Finals, the Euros, the World Cup, the Champions League. These are not players who will be overwhelmed by the occasion. These are players who know exactly what it means to perform under pressure. And that collective experience is one of Arsenal's biggest strengths on Sunday. When Kepa says they know what it is to play in big games every 3 days, he is not boasting. He is describing a reality that sets this squad apart from the Arsenal sides of recent years. These players have been tested at the highest level, and they have not been found wanting. The atmosphere at Wembley on Sunday will be extraordinary. Over 31,939 Arsenal supporters. 6 years of waiting. A trophy cabinet that has been closed since that silent final in 2020. The opportunity to open it again in front of a full crowd, in front of tens of thousands of their own people, is something that this group of players will not want to let slip. And if they do win it on Sunday, if Arsenal lift the Carabao Cup at Wembley, the psychological impact on the rest of the season would be enormous. Not just for the players, not just for the supporters, but for the message it sends to every other club still competing for the same prizes. A squad that wins one trophy starts to believe it can win them all. That is the nature of momentum in football. That is the power of a winning habit. Kepa said it directly, and it is worth finishing on this point. He said his hope is that this could be a way for Arsenal to open their trophy cabinet and to keep it open. Those are not throwaway words. That is a statement of intent from a player who understands exactly what is at stake. Not just on Sunday, but for everything that follows. Sunday at Wembley, Arsenal versus Manchester City, a Carabao Cup final, a potential first step toward a quadruple. Over 31,939 Arsenal supporters ready to witness history. And Kepa Arrizabalaga, the man who has been to this stage twice before, without winning, standing between the posts with one last chance to get it right. The stage is set. The squad is ready. The moment is here. This is Tom Arsenal Talks. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe to the channel right now so you never miss a video. Leave your prediction for Sunday in the comments below. And share this video with every Arsenal supporter you know, because this is the kind of moment we have been waiting for. Come on, Arsenal.